The stars hung silently in the void as the scout vessel Eternal Vigilance approached the third planet of an unremarkable yellow star. Commander Krelvex stood tall on the command deck, his four eyes blinking in sequence as he studied the blue-green world growing larger on the main view screen. Primitive communications detected across multiple bands, reported Science Officer Miralox, her tentacles dancing across the control panel. They call their world Earth and themselves humans. They appear to be in early space development phase. Krelvex nodded, his scaled head reflecting the soft purple lighting of the bridge. The Galactic hegemony had performed this ritual thousands of times over 12,000 years of peaceful rule. 37 species now lived under the benevolent guidance of the founding races, and these humans would soon join them. Standard approach protocol, Krelvex ordered. Prepare the welcome message in all frequencies they use. Remember, the Council expects a smooth integration. The massive ship adjusted course, its engines glowing with energies the humans couldn't yet comprehend. The hegemony had not faced a serious military challenge in 8,000 years. Peace reigned across three spiral arms of the Milky Way, through the overwhelming technological superiority of the founding races. Little did they know that Earth would change everything. Jack Miller sipped his coffee on the bridge of the USS Defender, a Navy destroyer patrolling the Pacific. At 42, he had the weathered face of a man who had spent most of his life at sea. His crew respected him for his calm under pressure and straightforward leadership. "Sir, radar is picking up something weird," called out Petty Officer Ryan Davis, his young face illuminated by the glow of his monitor. "It's big, really big, and it's moving in a way that doesn't make sense." Miller put down his coffee cup and walked over. "Show me." The radar display showed an object nearly a mile long descending through the atmosphere at speeds that should have torn any known aircraft apart. Yet there was no sonic boom, no signs of stress. "Get me the Pentagon," Miller ordered, his voice steady despite the adrenaline now pumping through his veins. "And bring us to combat readiness. Quietly." Within minutes, the situation had escalated. 3 more Navy vessels joined the Defender, forming a defensive perimeter. Above them, fighter jets screamed across the sky, taking position around the massive unidentified object that now hovered 5 miles above the ocean surface. "Sir, we're receiving some kind of transmission," Davis reported. I think it's a message, but our systems can't fully decode it." The ship's speakers crackled, with a strange voice speaking heavily accented English. "People of Earth, we come from the Galactic hegemony. Your world has been chosen for integration into our peaceful collective. Please power down your primitive weapons as a sign of acceptance." Miller's jaw tightened. 20 years of military service had taught him caution. Broadcast on all channels, "This is Commander Jack Miller of the United States Navy. We welcome peaceful contact, but will maintain our current defensive posture until diplomatic channels are properly established." Aboard the Eternal Vigilance, Krelvex frowned at the response. "They refuse to power down their weapons," reported Communications Officer Zarvos. "This is unusual for a species at their development stage." "Perhaps our translation matrix is flawed," suggested Miralox. "Their social structures appear more fragmented than we anticipated. They have no unified planetary government." Krelvex stroked his chin ridge thoughtfully. In 12,000 years of first contacts, the hegemony had developed clear protocols. Species typically reacted with either fear or awe, both emotions that led to compliance. These humans were displaying neither. "Move closer," he ordered. "Show them our technological superiority. They will understand that resistance is pointless." The massive alien vessel descended slowly until it hovered just 2 miles above the naval formation. Its size alone was intimidating, nearly 20 times larger than the largest human vessel below. "They're moving closer," Davis reported, his voice tight with tension. Commander Miller watched the giant ship through binoculars. Its surface gleamed with an otherworldly metal that seemed to shift colors in the sunlight. "Maintain position. Do not fire unless fired upon." His orders were relayed to the other ships and the fighter squadron above. The minutes ticked by in tense silence. Then something went terribly wrong. Junior Weapons Officer Peldax was fresh from the academy. This was his first assignment, and the behavior of these humans did not match any first contact scenarios he had studied. When the primitive vessels below began moving into what appeared to be attack formation, actually just standard naval procedure for the humans, panic gripped him. "Commander, they're preparing to attack," he shouted. Krelvex turned sharply. "Stand down, officer. That is not—" But Peldax had already activated the ship's defensive systems. A brilliant blue beam lanced down from the alien vessel, slicing through one of the smaller human ships as if it were made of paper. "We're under attack," someone shouted as the USS Crawford exploded in a ball of flame and twisted metal. Miller's training took over. "All ships, evasive maneuvers. Return fire with everything we've got," he ordered, knowing full well that Earth weapons might be useless against such advanced technology. The sea erupted with missile launches. Above, fighter jets screamed toward the alien vessel, releasing their payloads before banking sharply away. The sky filled with explosions as most human weapons detonated harmlessly against an invisible shield surrounding the alien ship. But not all. "Impossible," gasped Science Officer Miralox as alarms blared across the command deck. "Several of their primitive missiles have penetrated our outer shields." Krelvex gripped his command chair as the ship shuddered from multiple impacts. "How is this possible? Their technology is centuries behind ours." "They're using nuclear-tipped weapons," explained Miralox, her tentacles moving frantically across her console. "The electromagnetic pulse from the detonations is creating temporary weaknesses in our shield matrix. It's not supposed to happen." Another violent shudder ran through the ship as a lucky shot from a human fighter found one of these temporary gaps, damaging an engine nacelle. "Retreat," ordered Krelvex, his pride giving way to survival instinct. "Jump to hyperspace immediately." The massive vessel turned and accelerated upward, leaving Earth's atmosphere as human fighters gave chase. With a flash of brilliant light that temporarily blinded radar systems across half the planet, the alien ship vanished into hyperspace. Behind it, 3 human vessels lay destroyed, their burning wreckage spreading across miles of ocean. But one alien fighter, damaged in the battle, spun out of control and crashed into the Pacific. Earth had survived its first interstellar battle and gained its first piece of alien technology. 2 weeks later, on a distant world that served as the capital of the Galactic hegemony, Commander Krelvex stood before the High Council, his scales pale with shame. "These humans," spoke High Counselor Zivzanar, his ancient voice echoing in the vast chamber. "They damaged your vessel? A scout ship with technology thousands of years beyond theirs?" "Yes, Counselor," admitted Krelvex. "They are primitive, but unexpectedly resourceful. Their weapons are crude but applied with surprising tactical acumen." The council members murmured among themselves, their various appendages gesturing in concern. "And you believe they managed to capture one of our fighters?" asked another counselor. "I fear so," replied Krelvex. "It was damaged and falling when we jumped." Zivzanar's eyes narrowed. "In 12,000 years, no primitive species has ever achieved this during first contact." The council voted 32-5 to authorize a standard subjugation fleet, the typical response to violent or uncooperative species. 100 warships would be dispatched to Earth, a force that had never failed to quickly subdue a pre-interstellar civilization. "They will learn their place in the galaxy," declared Zivzanar as the session ended. None of them realized they had just declared war on the most dangerous species the galaxy had ever encountered. 6 days after the alien ship vanished, General Alan Howard walked through the heavily guarded underground facility in Nevada. At 55, his hair had turned silver, but his back remained straight and his eyes sharp. 30 years of military service had prepared him for many things, but not for this. "What have we learned?" he asked the woman walking beside him. Dr. Lisa Blackwood pushed her glasses up her nose and opened a folder. At 34, she was already one of the country's top physicists before being rushed to this secret project. "The crashed fighter is unlike anything we've ever seen, General," she said. "The metal of the hull can repair itself slowly. The computer systems use crystals instead of silicon chips. And the power source—" She shook her head in wonder. "It produces more energy than a nuclear power plant while being the size of a car engine." They entered a large room where dozens of scientists and engineers worked around pieces of the alien craft. In the center sat the damaged fighter, its strange shape like nothing made on Earth. "Can we use any of this?" Howard asked. Lisa smiled. For the first time. "We already are." 2 weeks later, General Howard stood before the emergency United Nations session. Representatives from every nation filled the hall, their faces showing fear, determination, and everything in between. "Ladies and gentlemen," Howard began, his voice strong and clear, "we are at war with an enemy we barely understand. Our best scientists believe the aliens will return, and in greater numbers. But make no mistake, we will not go gentle into the night." He pressed a button, and images appeared on the large screen behind him. They showed new weapon designs, shield concepts, and engine schematics. "In just 3 weeks, we have begun to understand alien technology from the crashed fighter. We believe we can adapt some of it to our own ships and weapons. But to do this, we need something we've never truly had before." He paused, looking around the room. "We need unity. Complete and total unity of purpose." The hall was silent for a moment. Then the Russian representative stood up. "Russia stands with humanity," he said simply. The Chinese representative rose next. "China offers all its industrial might to this cause." One by one, representatives stood, setting aside old conflicts in the face of this new threat. By the end of the day, the United Earth Defense Force was born. Lisa Blackwood hadn't slept properly in days. Her lab in what was now called Project Dawn had become her home. She stared at the equations on her computer screen, rubbing her tired eyes. "You should rest," said Sam Green, her assistant. He placed a cup of coffee next to her keyboard. "The aliens won't rest," she replied, taking a grateful sip. "And I'm close to something big." The alien shield technology had proven the hardest to understand. It operated on principles that seemed to defy known physics. But Lisa had spotted a pattern in the energy fluctuations that no one else had noticed. "What if it's not creating a solid barrier?" she muttered. "What if it's constantly shifting, adapting to different types of attacks?" Her fingers flew across the keyboard, entering new calculations. The simulation ran, and for the first time, it matched the observed data from the alien fighter's shield generator. "I've got it," she shouted, jumping up from her chair. "Sam, call General Howard. Tell him we can build our own shields." 6 months after first contact, humanity had accomplished the impossible. Factories around the world had been converted to war production. New shipyards orbited Earth, building vessels that combined human technology with alien concepts. The first crude shield generators were installed on key military bases and ships, and prototype faster-than-light drives were being tested on the far side of the moon. Jack Miller, now promoted to admiral, stood on the bridge of the UES Defiance, Earth's first true space warship. It wasn't as advanced as alien vessels, but it carried the hopes of humanity. "Engine room reports ready, Admiral," said his first officer, Commander Susan Wright. Miller nodded. "Take us out, Commander. Let's see what she can do." The Defiance rose smoothly from its lunar construction dock, its engines glowing blue against the blackness of space. 5 more warships followed, forming Earth's first space fleet. "Sir," Wright said quietly, "do you think we have a chance when they return?" Miller watched as Earth grew smaller behind them. "The aliens have technology, Susan, but we have something they don't." "What's that, sir?" "The knowledge that we're fighting for our very existence." 8 months after first contact, sensors on the edge of the solar system detected multiple hyperspace signatures. The Hegemony subjugation fleet had arrived, 15 massive capital ships and their escorts. Admiral Zurkov, commander of the fleet, was confident as he studied the reports on the primitive planet they had come to subjugate. "These humans have barely reached their own moon," he said to his officers. This will be a simple operation, standard formation. His second-in-command looked uncertain. Admiral, our scouts report increased activity around the planet. They appear to have constructed orbital facilities. Zurkov dismissed the concern with a wave of his hand. Primitive attempts at defense. Nothing that can stand against our weapons. Proceed as planned. On Earth, alarms sounded in every defense center as the alien fleet was detected. In the Global Defense Command Center, buried deep beneath the Rocky Mountains, General Howard received the reports with grim determination. "So they're here," he said. "Activate the defense plan. Launch all ships." Around Earth, 200 vessels prepared for battle. Some were purpose-built warships like the Defiance. Others were converted commercial vessels fitted with shields and weapons. All were crewed by the best Earth had to offer. Admiral Miller's voice came through the command center speakers. "First Fleet is moving to engage at Neptune orbit. We'll hit them before they reach the inner system." Howard nodded, though Miller couldn't see him. "Godspeed, Jack. Show them what humanity can do." The Battle of Neptune's orbit began with a surprise. The Hegemony fleet had expected no resistance until they reached Earth. Instead, they found themselves facing 200 human vessels in a formation unlike any in the Hegemony tactical manual. "What is this?" demanded Admiral Zurkov as the sensor data came in. "How have they built so many ships? And what is this formation?" The human fleet had split into multiple battle groups, approaching from different vectors rather than forming a unified line of defense. It made no sense to the Hegemony tacticians, whose warfare had become formalized over thousands of years of peace. "Standard attack pattern," ordered Zurkov confidently. "Their primitive technology cannot harm our capital ships." The Hegemony fleet moved forward in perfect formation, their weapons charging to deliver a devastating first strike that would end the battle quickly. But Admiral Miller had studied ancient naval warfare, not the rigid doctrines the Hegemony had developed. As the alien ships committed to their attack run, Miller gave the order. "All ships, execute Operation Wolverine." The human battle group suddenly changed course, their seemingly random formation revealing its purpose. While the main fleet engaged, the Hegemony front, Commander Susan Wright led her battle group in a daring flanking maneuver, striking at the alien fleet from behind. "They've surrounded us," shouted a Hegemony sensor officer in disbelief. "Impossible." The human weapons were less powerful, but they struck at the same points simultaneously. Overwhelming shield systems designed to handle fewer, more powerful attacks. 3 Hegemony capital ships exploded in brilliant flashes of light as their reactors went critical. Admiral Zurkov watched in horror as his perfect formation disintegrated into chaos. "How? They're primitives. They shouldn't be able to do this." The battle raged for 6 hours. When it ended, 7 Hegemony capital ships had been destroyed, and the remainder retreated in disarray. The cost was heavy. Nearly half the human fleet was lost, but Earth had won its first interstellar victory. On the Hegemony capital world, the High Council received the battle reports with disbelief. "Impossible," muttered High Counselor Zivzanar. "No species has ever adapted so quickly. No species has ever destroyed our capital ships with such primitive technology." Another counselor, his face pale, read from the final transmission from Admiral Zurkov. "They fight like nothing we've ever seen. They adapt. They improvise. Their tactics make no sense yet are devastatingly effective. We have awakened something terrible." Zivzanar looked up, his ancient eyes showing fear for the first time in centuries. "We must gather a larger fleet. We must crush these humans before they grow stronger." In the corner of the chamber, a military advisor who had studied the battle data whispered to his colleague, "I'm not sure we can." Dr. Kevin Reeves stood in the center of a large underground facility, surrounded by pieces of alien technology. At 46, his once dark hair now showed streaks of gray from months of non-stop work. Screens around the room displayed designs for weapons, shields, and engines that mixed human and alien technology in ways the Hegemony had never imagined. "The aliens think in straight lines," he told the military officers and government officials who had come to see his work. "They've been the strongest for so long that they've forgotten how to adapt." We don't have that problem. The United Earth government had established the Strategic Technological Adaptation Command, STAC, under Reeves's leadership 3 months after the Battle of Neptune's orbit. Their job was simple but vital: turn every piece of captured alien technology into a weapon. We don't need to match them technologically, Reeves continued, picking up a small device from a nearby table. We just need to create unexpected problems they've never faced before. Like this. He activated the device. Nothing seemed to happen, but on all the screens in the room, the alien writing changed to English. A translation matrix that can also rewrite their command codes, Reeves explained with a smile. When our ships get close enough, we can turn their own weapons against them. General Howard nodded in approval. How soon can we install these on our fleet? Production starts next week, Reeves replied. Just in time for the new ships. Across Earth, factories worked around the clock. In orbit, massive shipyards built vessels unlike anything seen before. Unlike the elegant, specialized ships of the hegemony, human ships were brutally practical, redundant systems, heavy armor, and weapons designed to overwhelm rather than finesse. Admiral Diane Clark, a veteran of Neptune's orbit, walked through the orbital shipyard, admiring the nearly finished UES Thunderchild. She doesn't look pretty, said the shipyard manager walking beside her. She's not meant to be pretty, Clark replied. She's meant to survive. Clark had spent months developing what would become known as Terran swarm tactics, coordinated attacks using hundreds of smaller craft to overwhelm larger enemy vessels. The new fleet was designed around this concept, with each large ship capable of carrying dozens of fighters. The hegemony builds ships like we used to build cathedrals, she explained to her officers later. Beautiful, specialized, perfect for their purpose. We're building ships like we build tanks, tough, adaptable, and mass-produced. Meanwhile, on the distant world of Fralxy Prime, Ambassador Paul Garcia met with the leaders of a species recently conquered by the hegemony. Unlike humans, the Fralxy were slender, with 4 arms and skin that changed color with their emotions. Currently, they all showed the deep blue of fear. Why should we help you? Asked Chief Speaker Zilon, his skin rippling. The hegemony would destroy our world if we rebelled. Garcia, protected by a breathing mask in the methane-rich atmosphere, leaned forward. Because we offer you something the hegemony never will: freedom and revenge. We've already proved they can be beaten. He showed them footage from the Battle of Neptune's orbit. The Fralxy watched in stunned silence as human ships destroyed the supposedly invincible hegemony vessels. How is this possible? Whispered Zilon. We think differently, Garcia replied simply. And together, we can think of even more ways to beat them. By the end of the meeting, the first alliance between humans and an alien species had been formed. The Fralxy wouldn't provide ships, they had none, but they offered something perhaps more valuable: knowledge of hegemony patrol routes, defense systems, and supply lines. 1 year after first contact, the hegemony launched its second, much larger assault. 50 capital ships and over 200 support vessels entered the Sol system, determined to crush the human resistance. High Admiral Vex's Trawl, the most decorated officer in the hegemony fleet, stood on the bridge of the super dreadnought Eternal Dominance. These humans have been fortunate, not skilled, he told his officers. No primitive species can stand against the full might of the hegemony. We will end this rebellion today. But as his fleet approached Mars orbit, his confidence began to waver. The human fleet they encountered was twice the size of the one they had faced at Neptune, and the ships looked different, cruder, but somehow more threatening. They've built all this in a year? Vextrell muttered in disbelief. Worse, as the hegemony fleet moved into attack formation, their long-range sensors detected energy signatures behind them, ships appearing from hyperspace. Admiral, called his sensor officer, we're detecting multiple rebellions across the Empire. Fralxy Prime, Zortak, Quillian. 6 worlds are in open revolt. Vexatral's blood ran cold. In 8,000 years, there had never been a successful rebellion against the hegemony. Now 6 were happening at once, precisely when the fleet was committed to crushing Earth. It's a coordinated attack, he realized aloud. Impossible. They couldn't have. But they had. Human diplomatic missions had reached out to recently conquered species throughout the Empire, offering them the chance to fight back while the main hegemony fleet was occupied with Earth. The Battle of Mars orbit became the stuff of legend. Outnumbered 3-1, the hegemony fleet still expected an easy victory due to their technological superiority. What they found instead was a human force that had learned and adapted from every previous encounter. Admiral Clark's voice was calm as she gave the order that would define human warfare. All ships execute Swarm Pattern Alpha. From the larger human ships, hundreds of smaller vessels poured out. Fighters, bombers, and small corvettes, each piloted by a human who understood they were fighting for the survival of their species. The hegemony fleet, designed to fight enemies that matched their tactics, found themselves overwhelmed by attacks coming from all directions at once. Their advanced targeting systems, designed to track a few dozen threats, were blinded by hundreds of smaller craft. "We can't target them all," shouted a hegemony weapons officer as his screen filled with approaching human ships. Captain Steve Johnson led the attack on the hegemony flagship from the bridge of the badly damaged UES Defiance. Half his crew was dead and the ship's main engines were failing. "Sir, we should retreat," urged his first officer. "The Defiance can't take much more." Johnson shook his head. "We're still combat effective. The Defiance stays until the job is done." His actions allowed 3 colony transports to escape the battle, carrying thousands of civilians to safety. The Defiance was destroyed, but not before it had launched all its fighters and missiles at the hegemony flagship, critically damaging its engines. The battle lasted for 14 hours. When it ended, the hegemony fleet was in retreat, having lost 22 capital ships and nearly 100 support vessels. The human losses were even higher. Almost 60% of their fleet was destroyed or disabled. But Earth had held, and the news of human victories spread across the galaxy at the speed of light. For the first time in 8,000 years, the hegemony faced a species that refused to be conquered. On the hegemony capital world, the mood in the High Council chamber was grim. "How?" demanded High Counselor Zivzanar, pounding his fist on the ancient table. "How have they defeated our fleets twice in a single year? How have they incited rebellions across the Empire?" Fleetmaster Krovak, the hegemony's highest military authority, looked deeply troubled. "They adapt faster than any species we've ever encountered. They use tactics we consider obsolete or suicidal, yet somehow make them work. And they build ships at a rate that should be impossible for their technology level." "What is your assessment?" asked another counselor. Krovak hesitated, then spoke the words no hegemony official had uttered in thousands of years. "I believe we have encountered a species that may be capable of defeating us." The chamber erupted in shouts and denials, but Zivzanar raised a hand for silence. "Then we must change our approach," he said slowly. "If we cannot defeat them quickly, we must prepare for something the hegemony has not done in 12,000 years. His ancient eyes narrowed. "We must prepare for a long war." What none of them realized was that humans had already been preparing for exactly that, and they were about to take the fight directly to the hegemony's doorstep. Colonel Michelle Rodriguez stood before her Special Forces team aboard the stealth vessel UES Shadow Strike. The ship's matte black hull absorbed rather than reflected light, making it nearly invisible against the backdrop of space. At 37, Rodriguez had the focused eyes of someone who had seen too much combat, and the steady hands of someone who had survived it. 3 years ago, the aliens came to our home and tried to conquer us, she told the 20 soldiers gathered in the briefing room. "Today we take the fight to theirs." The screen behind her showed images of a large space station orbiting a dusty red planet. "This is Outpost Zeta 9, a hegemony supply depot. It services their fleets in this sector. Our mission is to infiltrate, download their tactical database, plant charges on their fuel reserves, and leave before they know we were there." A young lieutenant raised his hand. "Ma'am, no human has ever set foot in hegemony space before. What if their security can detect us?" Rodriguez smiled grimly. "Then we improvise, Lieutenant. That's what humans do best." 3 years into what was now called the First Human War, Earth's military and technological capabilities had grown exponentially. The once overwhelming technological gap had narrowed significantly. Humanity had done what no other species had managed, turned the hegemony's own technology against them, while innovating in ways the ancient empire couldn't anticipate. In orbit around Earth, the new United Earth Space Command headquarters monitored operations across 20 star systems. General Howard, now with more gray than black in his hair, studied the large strategic display showing human forces in green and hegemony forces in red. Progress report on Operation Spearhead, he requested. Rodriguez's team has entered hegemony space, reported his aide. The shadow strike is on schedule, and Ambassador Garcia reports that 3 more species have joined our coalition. Howard nodded. Even he was sometimes amazed at how rapidly humanity had advanced. What had begun as a desperate defense of Earth had evolved into a coordinated campaign, across multiple fronts. Human strategy had shifted from defensive to offensive operations, special forces raids on hegemony supply depots, liberation of subjugated worlds willing to join the Allied Species Coalition, targeted strikes against shipyards and military installations. The hegemony, accustomed to fighting conventionally, struggled against human asymmetric warfare. Their military doctrine hadn't changed in millennia because it had never needed to. And what about Proxima Centauri? Howard asked. His aide smiled. The colony is established. 5,000 settlers and a defensive fleet in place. Admiral Martinez reports all systems operational. Howard allowed himself a moment of pride. Humanity's first extrasolar colony, a declaration that humans would not be confined to one system ever again. The mission went perfectly until it didn't. Colonel Rodriguez's team had infiltrated the hegemony outpost without detection. They had downloaded the tactical database and planted charges on the station's massive fuel tanks. They were 4 minutes from extraction when the alarm sounded. "We've been made," shouted Sergeant Kim as red lights began flashing in the corridor. Rodriguez didn't hesitate. Plan B, fall back to secondary extraction point. The team moved quickly through the station's corridors, their adaptive camouflage suits shifting to match the metallic walls. 3 hegemony security officers rounded a corner and raised their weapons. Rodriguez fired first, her modified pulse rifle dropping all 3 aliens before they could shoot. "Move!" They reached the secondary extraction point, a maintenance airlock, only to find it sealed and guarded. Plan C, Rodriguez said calmly, pulling a small device from her belt. It was one of Dr. Reeves's special creations, a universal override. That could hack hegemony systems. She placed it against the control panel. Nothing happened. They've changed their security protocols, she realized. Control, this is Spearhead Leader. We need immediate extraction. Plan Delta. There was a moment of silence on the comm, then, "Copy that, Spearhead Leader." Delta confirmed. ETA 3 minutes. Rodriguez turned to her team. "Defensive positions. We hold this corridor for 3 minutes." As hegemony security forces closed in from both directions, the humans prepared for a fight. What the aliens didn't know was that Plan Delta involved the shadow strike firing a focused energy beam directly through the station's hull to create an emergency extraction point. Exactly 3 minutes later, the wall behind them exploded inward as vacuum rushed into the corridor. Trained for this scenario, the humans activated their emergency shields, another innovation based on hegemony technology, but modified for personal use. One by one, they were pulled through the breach into space, where the waiting shadow strike scooped them up and immediately jumped to hyperspace. Behind them, the charges detonated, destroying the hegemony's fuel reserves and crippling their operations in that sector for months. On distant Zalthoros, the capital world of the hegemony, War Counselor Jexavon received news of the attack with growing concern. "Humans," he growled, reading the report. "They've struck 7 facilities in the past month alone." His aide, a younger member of his species, looked confused. "But how do they operate so deep in our territory? Their ships should be easily detected." "They modify everything," Jexavon explained. "They take our technology and change it in ways we never considered. Their stealth ships absorb our sensor scans instead of reflecting them. He brought up a holographic display showing recent human attacks across hegemony space. Dozens of small strikes that, together, were causing serious damage to the Empire's military capabilities. They're fighting a war unlike any we've faced in millennia, he continued. Not with massive fleets and overwhelming force, but with precision strikes, sabotage, and by turning our own subject species against us. Can we defeat them? Asked the aide. Jex Von hesitated, then spoke honestly. I don't know. The decisive moment came at the Battle of Proxima Centauri. The hegemony, finally recognizing the threat humans posed, committed a third of its total military strength to crush Earth's first extrasolar colony, a fleet of nearly 200 capital ships and their escorts. Admiral Ben Martinez watched from the bridge of the UES Vanguard as the massive enemy fleet approached Proxima Centauri. At 49, Martinez had fought in both the Battle of Neptune and the Battle of Mars. His reputation for bold, unconventional tactics had earned him command of Earth's most advanced battle group. They're taking the bait, he said quietly, as the hegemony fleet moved into position to engage what they thought was Earth's main defensive force. 50 ships in standard formation protecting the colony. His communications officer turned from her console. Sir, all ships report ready. Task Forces B and C are in position. Martinez nodded. Sometimes the craziest plan is the one they'll never see coming, he said, repeating the words that had become something of a personal motto. Execute Operation Anvil. Across the Proxima Centauri system, 70 human ships that had been hiding in the shadow of planets and moons powered up their engines. At the same time, another 80 ships performed a maneuver the hegemony considered suicidally dangerous, a hyperspace jump directly into the heart of the enemy formation. The hegemony fleet suddenly found itself surrounded, caught between 3 human battle groups attacking from different vectors. Their neat formation, designed for frontal engagement, couldn't respond effectively to threats from all sides at once. Press the attack, ordered Martinez as the battle unfolded exactly as he had planned. Don't give them time to regroup. Meanwhile, battle lasted nearly 2 days. When it ended, the hegemony had lost 39 capital ships and over 200 support vessels, losses not seen since the early days of the Empire. The remainder of their fleet retreated in disarray, leaving Proxima Centauri firmly in human hands. Even more significant was the psychological impact. 3 species that had been part of the hegemony for millennia formally broke their ancient oaths and joined the human-led coalition. Rebellions broke out on dozens of worlds. On distant hegemony worlds, a whispered phrase began spreading among the subjugated species. Fight like humans. In the High Council chamber on Zalthoros, the mood was somber as High Counselor Ziv Zanar addressed the gathered leaders. For 12,000 years the hegemony has known only victory, he said, his voice showing his age for the first time. Now we face a species that has defeated our fleets, raided our facilities, and turned our subject species against us. A younger counselor stood. We must commit all our forces, crush these humans once and for all. The military representatives exchanged glances. Fleet Master Krovak finally spoke. We have already committed significant forces. The humans defeat them not through superior numbers or technology, but through tactics we cannot predict. Then what do you suggest? Demanded Ziv Zanar. Krovak took a deep breath. We must consider something the hegemony has never done before. We must consider negotiating with them. The chamber erupted in shouts of outrage, but underneath the anger was a new emotion, one the hegemony leaders had not felt in millennia: fear. And on Earth, humanity was preparing for its most daring operation yet, a direct assault on Zalthoros itself. Fleet Admiral Olivia Butler stood on the bridge of the UES Humanity's Hope, the largest warship ever built by human hands. At 52, her face showed the strain of 5 years of constant war, but her eyes burned with determination. Through the main viewport, she could see hundreds of ships gathered for humanity's most daring mission yet. Operation Thunderbolt, a direct assault on Zalthoros, the capital world of the hegemony. The fleet wasn't just human ships. Vessels from 7 former hegemony species flew alongside them, their unique designs adding to the diversity of the formation. What had begun as Earth's desperate fight for survival had become a galactic revolution. "All ships report ready, Admiral," said her first officer. Butler nodded and pressed the fleet-wide communication button. "This is Fleet Admiral Butler to all ships. In 5 minutes, we jump to Zalthoros. Today we fight not just for Earth, but for every species that has suffered under hegemony rule. We fight to end an empire and birth a new era of freedom." She paused, looking at the faces of her bridge crew, humans who had trained and fought and lost friends in this long war. "Whatever happens today, remember this. The galaxy will never forget what we've done. Humanity has proven that even the mightiest empire can be challenged when enough brave souls stand against it." She raised her hand, then brought it down sharply. "All ships, jump to hyperspace." In perfect coordination, the massive fleet vanished into the swirling blue vortices of hyperspace, bound for the heart of the empire that had ruled the galaxy for 12,000 years. The Battle of Zalthoros lasted 7 days. The hegemony, fighting for its very survival, deployed superweapons not used in thousands of years. Planet-killing missiles, time distortion fields, and gravity weapons that could crush ships like tin cans. But humans and their allies responded with technologies that hadn't existed half a decade earlier. Adaptive shields that could learn from attacks. Quantum disruptors that could shut down hegemony weapons. And tactics no one had ever tried before. On the 3rd day, Commander Daniel Wright led a small team of special forces on what seemed like a suicide mission. Using stealth technology developed by Dr. Reeves, their tiny ship slipped through the massive battle undetected. "Ready for this?" Wright asked his team as they approached the planet's surface. Sergeant Linda Carter checked her weapons one last time. "Born ready, sir." Their mission wasn't to destroy the hegemony Central Command. It was to broadcast its secrets to the galaxy. Human intelligence had discovered that the Empire had maintained its power through lies and manipulation for millennia, hiding the truth from even its own people. The team infiltrated the facility using technology that bypassed defenses designed to stop conventional attacks. While Carter and the others held off security forces, Wright and tech specialist Alex Foster reached the central computer core. "How long do you need?" Wright asked, as Foster connected a device to the alien computer. 3 minutes to bypass security, 2 to download, 1 to broadcast," Foster replied, fingers flying across the interface. 6 minutes total." Wright nodded grimly. "You've got 4. Somehow they managed it in 5. The data burst went out on all frequencies, transmitted through the hegemony's own communication network to every world in the Empire. The secrets of 12,000 years of oppression laid bare for all to see. How the founding races had manipulated history, suppressed technological development, unconquered worlds, and even engineered conflicts to maintain their control. The Hegemony Council surrendered 3 days later, unable to continue fighting as their own citizens rose up against them. The Galactic Order collapsed and was reborn as the Interstellar Commonwealth, with Earth granted a permanent seat on the new council despite its youth. In the aftermath, a captured hegemony admiral asked Admiral Butler how humans had accomplished the impossible. Her response became famous throughout known space. "You had 12,000 years of peace that bred complacency. We had 5,000 years of war that bred innovation. When you encountered us, your only viable strategy was to run. But it's not in your nature to recognize when you're outmatched. It's in ours to recognize when we're not." A century later, as dozens of newly liberated species found their place in the Commonwealth, historians still studied the First Human War as the moment that changed galactic history forever. The monument on Zalthoros bore a simple inscription, "In memory of all who fell fighting tyranny, and in honor of humanity who taught the stars how to fight back."